Hello. Good to?
Hello.
So, somebody gave me a start? Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to day 6 of Auroville Festival. And today we are exploring the aspirational aspect of Mahakali, one of the 4 aspects of the mother. In this session or in our discussion today, we seek to call the flaming courage of Mahakali. We struggle through surface natures, the indolence, the preferences, the limitations. We hesitate and dally or blindly rush into the fray. In a constant contradiction, aspiring for the calm and the peace, as calls echo to rise and fight. Sincerity may be our safeguard, our courage and self-possession. It's also our strength, endurance, and faith, our companions. But on what road? So with this, I invite each one of you, thank you for making your time to come here, and I invite Nilima to just give a very brief description of you for our audience who at this point in time are online watching us.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. We have Dr. Belu Mehra. Dr. Mehra is a senior academic mentor at Aurobharati in Sri Aurobindo Society. She is the editor of the Society's monthly journal, Renaissance. She has a PhD in education from the University of Illinois and a master's in economics from the Delhi School of Economics. For the last 10 years, Dr. Mehra has also worked as a professor in the US, and before moving to Pondicherry, she has been working as a professor, and now she has dedicated and made a focused effort at studying Sri Aurobindo. We have Joseba. Joseba is from Spain and has been living in Auroville for the past 28 years. For the first 10 years, he worked with Roger in AV Future, and then with FAMC Housing Service and some of the areas of education in Auroville. He was involved in various housing projects and in the building of the town hall. He lives an active life here in Auroville as a member of the working committee and passionately pursues his study of yoga. We have Liv. Liv here was an actress before coming to Auroville in 2009. And she worked predominantly in the guest house sector in Auroville and at present is an active and bold member of the ATDC. And we have S. Shankaranji. Shankaranji describes himself as a child of the mother who first came for a casual visit in 1989 and became a captive of her love. He spent a couple of years in Auroville from 2000 and then became a full-time volunteer at the ashram in Pondicherry. He's also engaged in the Delhi ashram and helps them in managing the study camps at Nainital. Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Nilima. So I'll start today's discussion, which we talked about the strength, which is the courage to step boldly and spring forward. So Joseba, if you could, it's been 28 years for you, where you came to Auroville and from a known, comfortable past that you've had. What for you was courage? How does courage explore for yourself in either your daily life or in the work that you do, and especially when in a community like Auroville, where we have come for the larger vision, and the gap between what is very familiar and the fact that we're working towards the vision calls for a huge amount of courage. But there are also contradictions. Life is a contradiction inside or outside. So in this dynamic environment, which is within and out, what is courage? How does it feel like, look like? How do we listen to that voice? And especially when it is either challenged or especially when there is contradictions being thrown, or it's even questioned.
Well, it has been mentioned, when I came to Auroville after the first year of newcomer, I discovered that there were many people in Auroville speaking against the city already at that time. I was part of an interview in which even some people requested that it was a journalist there, that Roger Anger should leave Auroville because it was not necessary. This was in the year 1995. So after listening this kind of explanations, and my period of newcomer was almost over, at that time we decided in that context to help Auroville to develop the idea of the city, and then we went and we started to work with him. I have to say that these two aspects that are mentioned here, sincerity and courage, in all those years, we were in need of a lot of sincerity towards the mother, because we came here to try to materialize her vision, not our vision, her vision. And there are many people that confuse in Auroville the two terms. And they have preferences, they have mental ideas, they have all kind of things, sometimes can fit in the vision of the mother, others not. And they continue confirming his views and putting in danger the vision of the mother. This was very present at that time and during the rest of the life in the office of Auroville Future, because we were confronted with a number of people in Auroville that they didn't want the city, they didn't come for that, especially greenbelters, architects that they have their own idea how the city should be, and then they were criticizing the model of the galaxy and all this, and different people, some of them very intelligent, and then they were with their mind, they were questioning central aspects, in my opinion, of the city of the mother. We never came here to do our city, we came here to do the city of the mother. So, Auroville was a very good ground test to trust these two aspects, to tell these two. Sincerity, for me, sincerity in the context of Auroville is to be sincere towards the mother, all the guidelines that she gave to us for not being lost in this world, and many of the central concepts that she explained many times. We don't need to put our ideas in front. We need to be very respectful, and I believe this is one essential aspect of Auroville that has been lost. Until a certain extent today, in Auroville, many people want to develop their own ideas about the environment, about the city, about all kinds of things. And many times, the vision of the mother is relegated, put apart, is not important, or the times have changed. There are all kinds of mental justifications. The truth is that we should be absolutely sincere with the mother, ideas, concepts, and the plan that she had. And if we are not at that level, we should leave Auroville. This is at the level of sincerity what I believe we should do. Being in the office of Roger, we have to confront many wrong ideas, many deviations, many concepts, and many mindsets that were not in agreement with the central concepts of Auroville, and we have to defend that ideas for many years. And I have the example of Roger Anger, for me one of the best examples in all Auroville. Roger have the direct mandate of the mother. Even many people don't know these kind of details, but when mother wanted something strongly, she was very careful in the way of preparing the event. She brought to Roger one letter with a paper recycled of the ashram, and on their own hand, sent this letter to Roger to his address in France, and was asking him to be part of the Auroville project. And I remember still one of the sentences was, "I always believed that you were the man of this project." So, and then give the mandate for him to do all the plan of Auroville and to execute the construction of the city. Well, many people from the beginning didn't respect this. And many architects were telling, "Oh, Roger is outdated, whatever. It's not the man that we need. We need somebody more flexible." And then they were criticizing many aspects of the galaxy concept and doing all kind of histories. I saw that Roger, perhaps if he was chosen, was for several reasons. He has two attributes, two virtues very strong: sincerity and courage. So Roger fight for the ideas that the mother was given to him, defend until the end the model that she was working with Roger. We cannot forget that Roger was for 3 years discussing with the mother, and there are plenty of details that they were discussing together, and Roger accepted whatever the mother told to him, and he defended in front of many people of this community the ideas, the vision of the mother, and not his own ideas. This was an excellent example. In courage, he was suffering a lot. He was receiving pressures from plenty of people in Auroville, wanted to change all kind of things. One of the biggest fights in the history of Auroville for these years was the fight for the Matrimandir. This took almost 1 year. And finally, this community accepted that Roger will implement the Matrimandir until the end. And today we can see what is the Matrimandir, what kind of gift Roger.
So if I were to ask you, without getting into the details of that, in all of this, what does exemplify courage? If you were to just summarize that in a few lines, like what does summarize courage? I hear you say that it is the commitment, the sincerity to working towards the mother. That's a given. And she had a vision, and we all come here to be the willing servitors of the divine consciousness. But when it comes to practical reality, we are still human in progress. We are being guided, and each one believes that they are being guided, right? So in a situation like this, how does one hold what is that conviction of courage? How does one express that without getting into what happened? How does one live that? And this is a daily struggle.
Okay. I believe that in the present context, even today in Auroville, we are passing through a very serious crisis, and is needed a big courage to defend certain ideas in the context of Auroville. And you have to oppose to many people. Many people are, for example, in my case, there were several lists circulating in Auroville with a number of names that the list was called waste list. And my name was there. My wife's name was there.
Sorry to hear that.
And then, they were circulating in different places, and you could see the list. I tell you, sometimes it's necessary to have a big courage to continue defending what do you think that is good for Auroville, and refuse plenty of ideas and plenty of things that doesn't correspond to Auroville, are not aligned with the values that the mother give for Auroville, and many things like this. And this courage you have to exercise every day. And I have seen wonderful examples, and I am going to follow this until the end.
Thank you. Thank you. So what I hear you say is, one, of course, it's a sincerity. What are we committed to creating as this? But what I heard you say is that obstacles can come. It is the courage within one to be able to get up each day and bring that strength and to continue irrespective of whatever may happen. And in that context, I'm reminded of this student's prayer, and I would like to read for the benefit of the audience. Make of us the hero warriors we aspire to become. Make of us the hero warriors we aspire to become. May we fight successfully the great battle of the future that is to be born, against the past that seeks to endure, so that the new things may manifest and we may be ready to receive them. So coming to you, Shankaranji, taking on, and I think it's a beautiful segue that he's given about, this is it, right? One is a vision that we have. It's the aspire to manifest that. But we also have a past, and of whatever that past may be, which also makes its presence felt, and we have to endure that. So where sincerity is there, it's a given, and it's the first quality that the mother wants, and it's also the theme of the festival. Is it a safeguard, or is it an opening? And as we leap towards this future realization, how does one really, in this gap that is there, right, between the past to enjoy and being open to the future to receive, how does one practice this courage or this sincerity, and how does one continue to leap to actualize what in this prayer that is said, right? And main, that we be ready to receive them.
If I am not mistaken, this prayer was given in 1962 by the mother to the children. And we all know that in 1956, the supramental manifestation had already taken place. So, that is where you have this emphasis on the future. Because when the supramental came, mother said, it is not the old world turning into the new. It's a new world that has been born. And she said, they are existing parallelly. The old is still very strong, but the new is already here. Now, in that context, and second, one more thing is, of course, what we are talking about is again and again, we are talking about the aspiration in the student's prayer, the courage. Matrimandri, when she gave the petals, she started with sincerity, sincerity, humility, gratitude, then on till generosity, equality, and peace in there. So there again, she put sincerity in the prayer first. Very interestingly, she has named a flower called psychological perfection, which has got 5 petals. When she was naming the petals, she said first, you see, we will not put surrender because surrender is everything. We will put sincerity first. And then, of course, there are other 5 like aspiration, trust, devotion, perseverance, the 5 names of the petals. So we see that even though we have these 12 qualities or whatever, mother always gave sincerity that primary importance. And, she said sincerity is the master key. Because you don't have, even while naming the psychological perfections, he said surrender is everything, but sincerity, without sincerity, there is nothing. So what is the sincerity? Because to understand whether it's a safeguard, we have to understand what is sincerity. See, when mother named these 5 petals in the psychological perfection flower, she gave them other names. She said sincerity or transparency, aspiration or courage, devotion or gratitude. And then she said perseverance or endurance. And then I'm leaving one more that she gave this parallel name, faith or trust. They work together. So she called sincerity transparency. We have to understand before we say that, we want to be sincere. Yes, at our present level, we say, when we say I want to be sincere to the mother, then I say I don't want to do anything which she has said you should not. Ego, I should go and work for harmony. I should like to try to do whatever I do as best as I can. Always aim for perfection. But here now I will try to see from the viewpoint of the future, of the sadhana, why sincerity is so important. Why has this been given this kind of a very special place? Now I will tell something which she said in 1971 with a great emphasis. There is only one consciousness, one being, one force. So, there is nothing else. That is reality, not only up there somewhere, right here, right now. That is reality. That is truth consciousness. To live that is the supramental life. Spontaneously, naturally. And here we are in a situation where what we call ignorance, the lower hemisphere, so to say the programming of the physical, the vital, the mental, is totally against that. There's a total denial of reality. And we are filled with these elements. My mind, my will, my emotions, and ultimately the body, where it is the worst. But that is something it's not so easy to deal with in the beginning. But even in the mind, we pay, so to say, the acceptance of, because she had also said, this is the truth of the Vedas. Aham Brahmasmi, I am the Brahman, Tattvamasi, that the what? Sarvam Kalvidam Brahman, everything is that one soul reality. And Prajnanam Brahma, the knowledge of it is the Brahman. You have that knowledge, the Brahman realization, you become the Brahman. So, sincerity is the state to begin with when you attempt to live it, not just pay lip service to it. And then comes a stage progressively when you are able to experience, even here and now, that there is nothing but the divine. The mother said this is one of the worst mistakes you can make is that if you divide between the spiritual and the mundane. You say this is ordinary life. And there is a spiritual consciousness somewhere there, the divine somewhere there. No, not there. Right now, if I am truly sincere, I will experience that it's not I who is speaking. The divine, using the limitations of my own instrumentality, mind, life and body, is using them. But as they are. Surrender is only to make the sincerity more and more, where I am more and more less. And when I become more and more less, more and more dilute, more and more transparent, and finally disappear altogether in that transparent. Transparency, absolute, is there is nothing. Obviously, all the past disappears. I don't say I am sitting in a chair and talk about gravity and mass and everything, and that chair is supporting me. I am sitting in a space where the divine alone is real and active. It is the divine who is this chair. And who is upholding me right now? Not the chair. Because the divine alone is reality. I am experiencing being held up by the mother. All this is there in the Vedas. You see, Veda there is something called dhadara, that is the upholding of the universe. And because Kapali Shastri was a realized Srividya Upasaka, he saw the mother when she used to walk in the 30s on the terrace of our ashram building. He used to see that column of white light moving around with her. And that is what it means. It is again something, our mind will put the concept somewhere in the other stories of Vishnu and Shiva. No, this is reality here and now. Every structure here retains its form by the will of the divine. If the divine withdraws support from any one of these pillars, the pillars not merely may collapse, it will disappear. But yes, there is a universal programming. Generally, the divine does not act arbitrarily. He has programmed everything, so the physical laws are upheld. Similarly, there are laws of the vital, there are laws which are part of the mental. And beyond that, as we progress, we have the higher laws or the spiritual laws taking over, which can not totally negate the present laws, but can always, give you a kind of an advantage, because you are now having a higher consciousness operative in your present life. And of course, we never know that individually whether somebody is going to just become supramental. It is not the supramental being, because everything is connected. Because when we talk about the supramental being, we are also talking about the oneness. So I am not going to say that, one fine morning I am going to wake up and I am going to be a supramental being, though that is nonsense. And Sri Aurobindo himself said, probably because of that reason, I will be the first supramental being to manifest here on earth in a supramental body. He deserves it. The leader steps in first across the threshold and the followers follow. But before that, there's already the supramental consciousness here, and Mother has talked about that being, whatever we call the overmental being or the superman. Mother has talked about it.
So in this context, what is courage?
Exactly. Now let's come. Sincerity, transparence. In the
Can you hold the
psychological
mic,
perfections, she has called aspiration as courage. So courage, I can take piecemeal. But then the courage can be misplaced also. It may not be the courage that is right. I can have a courage to, go, if somebody, comes in front of my bike, I can have the courage to go and punch him. But then we are not talking about courage as a divine quality. It is something where I am using that term to express my, emotional preference towards violence. In fact, real courage would be the reverse of that. To be able to stand my ground when everything tells me you have a right to violence. Nobody is going to ask you why, because you are justified in doing, and everybody will say you are justified. And when you take the decision in spite of all that, again you revert back to your truth, where we see when we walk up to the Sri Aurobindo's room, cling to truth. That the person in front for me no longer is another human being with whom I am going to pick a fight. He is the same divine who's me. How simple everything becomes. Of course, Sri Aurobindo said, keep your common sense. It doesn't mean that if he's going to come and try to hit me on the head with a stick, I'm going to accept it, then that's my courage. That would be running away from common sense. But so many of the issues we have in the world, in communities, how easy it becomes when you cling to truth and make that whatever happens, I will not compromise the truth. Mother herself said, she used to say so much about harmony. But she said harmony, but without compromising the truth. But the truth is not my preference. It is not what I said, oh, this is the right thing to do here. And I'm going to fight for it. So that she said very clearly, it's better that there are 5 people taking a decision. Maybe your idea is the best idea. And there are other ideas which are also good ideas. So I would prefer not the best idea, but an idea which has the participation of all the other 4 ideas. Even though it may not be 100%, it may be just 90%. But 90% is fine. Because again, it's a yoga, a movement where we have to take everybody together. Why? Because they are me. It's not I moving. They are part of this one being consciousness and then there comes to what I identify myself as. If I deny that, I deny my own divinity. Yo ya shraddha sa eva sara. Krishna said this in the Gita, Sri Aurobindo said this many times. Whatever is the faith that you are, that you are. So if my faith is in the truth, that I am simply a portion here of that one reality and so is everybody and everything else, then my psychological attitude changes. I no longer can even think from the ego point of view. Of course, again, the physical, when it comes, it's very difficult, but there also it will happen one day. But Mother said, first the mind, then the vital, and finally the physical. And then things become easy, and then there is always a radiating influence. In fact, places like the ashram and Auroville have been created so that we can set this example, that we can show how we can live together as many, because it's very easy to live that oneness in a state of samadhi somewhere up there, where you are not a part of life. The glorious, beautiful light is there all around you and you are just lost in that. And when you come here, you are in a hurry just to eat and go up there again. But here to live it, that takes courage. And that courage is that aspiration, that both the aspiration and the sincerity. That the divine for me is the reality and I will not be swayed by what the Mother has called the phenomenal world. And the appearances of the phenomenal world which are transitional. I reject that which is transitional and will at every moment, and there is no question of anymore, my preference or me and what will happen to me and what's going to happen to me and how things will change, whether it's good for me or bad for me, nothing matters. That is courage. I say, I want that truth to manifest through me, and the first thing I have to do for that is to belong to that. That is my identity.
So what I hear you, So what I hear you say is, thank you for that clarification of sincerity, transparency, aspiration, and courage. But what I also hear is it is the divine manifestation and to being sincere to that and to manifesting the truth, whatever it may take, and that's the courage. But in that process, one will be churned, one will be chaffed, one will be burnt. But the idea is to be able to go through that process without losing sight of the truth manifestation.
Yeah, but then there are different levels, you see.
Sure.
The level of consciousness I am at present, Mother said, maybe before you have reached that truth consciousness, how do you operate? She said, operate from your highest consciousness. Because there is something in you, your psychic being will tell you what is the right thing to do. Again, that is the thing, the courage to listen to your own psychic being. That means you have to reject all the preferences, likes and dislikes.
That's the hardest part to do, isn't it?
In fact, I can come to some beautiful lines, just 6, 7 lines, which gives the gist of this yoga, as well as tells you why this sincerity ultimately has to become transparent. You see, we know the adoration of the Divine Mother from the book of the Divine Mother, where at the head she stands. At the end of that passage, a few lines come. Our self shall be one self with all through her, in her confirmed, because transformed in her. Our life shall find in its fulfilled response, above the boundless hushed beatitudes, below the wonder of the divine, embrace divine. Then comes, once seen, his heart acknowledged only her. Only, of course, before that, his spirit was caught in her intolerant flame. Once seen, his heart acknowledged only her. Only a hunger of infinite bliss was left. All aims in her were lost. Then found in her. His base was gathered to one point in square. So you see, all my aims, everything that I thought about, I wanted, past, present, future, everything has disappeared in one go. It doesn't mean it has disappeared like blank. But when it comes back, it no longer comes back to me, it comes back as a part of her. It means I still stay in the same house. I still go out, I see the same shops. I'm not saying that everything has changed and everything has become beautiful. The rubbish dump is still there. The dogs are still there. But something has changed, the most wonderful. And this is something which comes in the very next paragraph, where this question is generally asked, why surrender to the mother in this yoga? Sri Aurobindo is there, and Sri Aurobindo said, I and the mother are one, the same consciousness. Why surrender to the mother? Because he himself said it. It's there in Savitri, about the yoga. This light comes not by struggle or by thought. In the mind silence, the transcendent acts. In the hushed heart, hears the unuttered word. A vast surrender was his only strength. Now comes the process of this yoga of transformation, movement from ignorance to truth. A power that lives upon the heights must act, a power with a capital P. A power that lives upon the heights must act, bring into life's close room the immortal's air, and fill the finite with the infinite. And Sri Aurobindo again said, this thing cannot be done by human because we are the finite. The miracle which has to be worked out, in the old yogas it used to be called Ghatakasha, it's like air in an earthen pot. The pot breaks and you are one with the air all around. It's so easy. Of course, not so easy, but still you will that and the pot breaks. Here the task is different. Transformation means what? To fill that pot with the entire space. The pot can't do it, but there's a power which can do it. The power which exceeds this universe, the power of the transcendent supreme. When that does that, that is transformation. And that again, for that, I have to not have any obstructions coming in between. And that comes, you see, again, this is almost like the action of Mahakali. The lines exactly after this. What do they say? The power that lives upon the heights must act, bring into life's close room the immortal's act, and fill the finite with the infinite. All that denies must be torn out and slain, and crushed the many longings for whose sake we lose the one for whom our lives are. See, the action is exactly that of Mahakali, and there is no compromise. Not that, many things which all that denies.
So on that line, I know we can go on. I want to continue with Dr. Belu. The Kshatriya, the war which is the extreme contradiction of the soul's high aspiration, and taking in, I think, of beautiful lines on which he ended about the Kali. The soul's high aspiration to peace within and harmlessness without, the striver and fighter, whose necessary turmoil of struggle and action seems to be the very contradiction of the soul's high ideal of calm mastery and self-possession. And it seeks for an issue from that contradiction, a point at which it terms meet and a poise which shall be the essential basis of harmony and transcendence. So, with the kind of elaboration that Shankarji has given, and with this, when you're saying the Kshatriya, the warrior, and the prayer also, the hero's warrior. So there is a warrior. What is this war about? And from here on, what it is, what's that courage that we can talk about, which can really step into bringing that reality down?
Yeah, it was really wonderful to listen to Shankaranji, and before that, Hoseba also. I was reminded that Mother had once said, our yoga is not for the coward. It requires immense courage. And either in the same passage or elsewhere, she said, if you have any kind of fear, if you allow any kind of fear to come near you, then you better leave it. This is not the yoga for you. So, courage is so essential in this path, in any spiritual path, but particularly in this integral yoga, where the goal is not to break that pot, as Shankaranji was saying, but to have the pot itself transformed into the pot of gold that it is meant to be. And again in the Savitri, there is that passage when King Ashwapati goes into the dark, the descent of night, descent into night. In that particular canto, there are a few lines which I think also summarize very well the true essence of Kshatriyahood that we are concerned about. And these are the lines. Only were safe who kept God in their hearts. Courage their armor, faith their sword, they must walk. The hand ready to smite, the eye to scout, casting a javelin regard in front, heroes and soldiers of the army of light. So if we have to fight the darkness within and without, we need to be part of this army of light, soldier of light. That requires immense courage to be perfectly transparent, to be perfectly sincere, requires immense courage, because these are things, if all yoga is life, and if this life is full of all kinds of kind of like net practice sessions through which we will develop that kind of endurance, that kind of faith, that kind of aspiration that is needed to walk the path of light and to keep fighting the darkness within. It requires tremendous courage. It requires tremendous willpower to pick up. We'll fall back, evidently, and then to have the courage to pick up again, to keep calling the mother, because she alone can pick us up. And so that is the quality of that warrior, the hero warrior, the kshatriya, that in our Indian tradition, we've talked, we talk about the four predominantly soul forces, or the shades or the colorings of the soul, in which the three gunas of Prakriti, Rajas, Sattva, Tamas, when they interact with the Anant Guna, the infinite quality of the spirit in nature, how these four main soul forces predominate the spirit that is manifested in human individual. And this kshatriya tendency or temperament, that is the power of will force. So it requires that will to get up again and to say that this another lesson on the chin, and to walk back again. So the opposite of that is, or rather the opposite, maybe not, that's not the word I'm looking for. The prerequisite to having that will force is complete fearlessness, having a sense of high nobility, high honor, having the strength and will to take everything, every attack that comes from life, within or without. That is also part of the kshatriya nature. The other thing is also, see, the word kshatriya comes from this root which has the sense of protection in it. Kshat, right? So the one who offers protection. So not to accept any injustice, any oppression, rather to have a kind of a warrior attitude to fight against the injustice, against oppression. So these are also part of that kshatriyahood that is required to walk the path of integral yoga. And at one place, it's very interesting if you think about it, Sri Aurobindo used the term Arya, the word Arya, for the journal that he started with the mother in 1914. And Arya, he said, is that which integrates perfectly the quality of Brahman and Kshatriya. So Brahman is the power or the soul force of knowledge, wisdom, the Maheshwari aspect, the one who pursues knowledge and contemplative knowledge, contemplates on what is known. And the other, the Kshatriya, is the power of the will force, courage. So the beautiful synthesis or integration of two is the Aryan ideal that was considered the noblest, goal to pursue in our Indian tradition. And very interestingly and very importantly, Sri Aurobindo used that word Arya because he wants all of us to rise to that Aryahood. So, and then in another writing, in one of his Bengali writings, he speaks of another important quality of this Aryanhood, which is also very important for Kshatriya, is humility, which comes next to sincerity. Yeah. So, because without humility, without a sense of nobility and the wisdom, Kshatriyahood can very easily turn into the Asura, without, that could be ruthless power if it is simply a pursuit of power or courage like that. So, what is the goal towards which this power is going towards? This courage is going toward. So, nobility, humility, protection of the weak, not having any tendency to do anything that would oppress others. So all those are part of the Kshatriyahood that we must cultivate within if we have to walk the path of integral yoga. That is also, I think, really key to understanding that before we get to that calm mastery within, that peace within that we are looking for, the turmoils within have to be addressed. And at the same time, there is also something about integral yoga, as Shankaranji was saying, it's also a collective yoga. You cannot leave the world, the society just outside of us. So this mixed world that we live in, which is full of all kinds of falsehood and ignorance and ego, desire, there is naturally going to be a lot of violence, physical violence I'm talking about. How do you meet that force of physical violence? You cannot meet this or address through moral means, like the kind of Gandhian ahimsa that has failed. To address that, you need physical force itself. Mm-hmm. So for that also, again, I think Sri Aurobindo makes a beautiful distinction that the tendency, the soul turning of those who had the temperament of the Kshatriya. In ancient times, the kind of ethical training, the kind of education they were provided would be a way for them to channel that strong courageous tendency that they had to the right kind of Kshatriya temperament. In absence of that, that becomes loose, that becomes chaotic, that becomes ruthless and crude. So there is something to be said about the role of education, the role of collective life, and because we still have to face that outer physical violence. So you cannot not have a complete integral life, individual or collective, without this power of the Kshatriya. So I'll take a pause here and see if you have it.
Yeah, so it's a very beautiful platform that you brought, which is also the point of talking about that calm-centered action, right? So a warrior who is watching and witnessing both the inside and the outside, but acts from a different context within, versus if this context of the centering or the peace is absent, then that act, or whether it be a word, a feeling, it could just be a body posture, becomes violence. And yet the same thing when done from a centered context, that probably could alter, because the consciousness or the energy that gets carried with it is very different. And that I bring to you this most often, like, interesting what she said, like calm can be seen as very static, let me withdraw into my world, let me do, and not engage. And maybe that way I will support non-violence, I'll support peace. Basically step back from action, right? But there is another where action, dynamism is required, like Mahakali is needed, and that she talked about, right? The tempering it with the wisdom, right? The tempering with the knowledge, the right knowledge, which comes from a deep calm within. So to that, what for you would be a calm-centered action? What would be the quality of where dynamism is centered in a very deep, calm within, versus to say, let me withdraw from the world, because withdrawing from the world could also be fear. And courage talks about fearlessness, right? And I'm not very sure that it means elimination of fear. You act despite of the fear, which becomes less and less and less. But there is that courage to act, the warrior that you bring, tempered. So, of course, given your background as an actress, but that's one life avatar that you have lived. But I think as an actress, you bring that quality, right? To act out a persona from a very deep centric space within. I could be completely wrong. But in the context today of the world that we're finding in, how do you see this calm-centered action across all the levels?
Well, I think that we are not really seeing it. Our global society is extremely chaotic and in upheaval. And I think there's a lot of hysteria, in fact. It's about the opposite of calm-centered action. And when you say calm-centered action, the image that comes to mind is East Asian martial arts. It's for me, it's really very... It's typically East Asian somehow to suppress all of the very heavy emotions, keep that under wraps somehow. And I'm very European. I have no clue how to do all of that. So I'm not sure whether I'm the right person to talk about it. But you can see that when you look at there are Chinese movies or Japanese movies that have that very strongly as a quality. I mean, I may be wrong. There may be Indian movies that have that as well. But that very much controlled out with hardly anything outward visible and still having these actions. Well, how much of an imagined kind of thing it is in movies, I don't know. Whether it's how many people can really embody that in this world. I have big questions about that, and probably we don't really know them because they won't. They will stand out somehow in a way that will not be portrayed in our society. Our society goes for the grotesque and for the heavy emotions and the things that the sensationalism. So if people have that kind of quality, they would just be ignored, I suppose. But how can we actually embody that? Because that's true what we need to do. And if, as Shankarji said, if we go to the room of Sri Aurobindo, there's the sign, cling to truth, because that is what I think should be the basis. I mean, how else can you do these kind of things? A very calm and centered action inspired by Satanism or something seems a bit awkward. So it would probably have to come from some truth. But at the same time, in our present day society, almost everybody that you speak about truth about is, oh, everybody has their own truth. Oh, what is truth? Oh, you can't really know truth. Truth is ungraspable. And I always think that Mother said, cling to truth. How can she have said cling to water? If it was, I mean, if the truth is not something solid and really there that you can grasp, then why would she say that? It becomes meaningless. So we need to find somewhere that truth. And it's very difficult, I think, in a world that's made up of falsehood, to find that truth to act from. But that's the only solution is indeed go to something like that, find that, and then by standing upon that also, not being above all of the chaotic mess that the world is. Because that's also, I mean, Auroville, the stage we are in, Auroville has created chaos and dysfunctionality and an extreme individualism. So it's very, how do you act within that? I think most people that really have a sincere connection with truth and want to do that calm, centered action will become more or less invisible and will withdraw out of doing things because it's hardly possible. You're just knocked from whatever centeredness you may have. I mean, you're really put to the limit of the test here. People will. I mean, I'm really sorry to say, but people will just. Specifically, when you stay centered and calm. Oh, that. By the way, that's very important. I think there's been since the psychological understanding of the strength that can come from calmness. It's become a kind of a gimmick, kind of okay. I'm now going to debate you in a very quiet way, and I'm gonna say what kind of a shit thing you are and things, but I'm so calm, so I have the moral high ground here, and I'm calm, you see, so no matter how I insult you and things, I'm still above everything, because I'm calm, so I must come from truth. Don't you think? This is that whole thing that it makes it even worse, that whole everything. I mean, in our world, you can see that everything that Mother and Sri Aurobindo spoke about, fought for, have suffered for, and worked for, is being turned upside down, twisted, corrupted, in a way that there's a pretense of it. And it misses the reality behind it. It's become all a kind of la 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 la. Things. I mean, everybody is talking about, in the world even, there's talk about, globalization is what you could say, oh, it's the unity of humanity. But it's meant to just divert resources, money, all of that into a kind of thing and just have one hand over the whole world instead of not being able to touch certain pieces. So all of that thing, well, okay, here I am. I'm not very known for my calm-centered action. Most people that have worked with me know that I blow up in 7 colors whenever I get emotional about things. So, but yeah, I would like to aspire to these things. I mean, of course, it's when I discovered the ashram through very cliche, the adventure of consciousness, and because Satram and he describes the yoga, and it's so much about mental silence. And I thought, me, here I am, because my mind goes all over the place. I'm the last person that can do meditation. I can't sit still. You can see that I've been moving all the time. So that kind of thing was for me like, oh yeah, please. What's give me the magic words, let me get it. Give it to me. So that was 20 years ago, and here I am. Where's my mental silence? So that calm-centered action that comes from a deep connection with the truth and with a quiet mental and a quiet vital, no disturbances, let the thing come and let it be. I don't know how long it's still going to take for me, but it will be a little while. But everybody knows, I think, deep down inside, it's like the truth. We always recognize truth when well, no, that's also not true. People can be totally oblivious of the truth if it flies at them in the face. But anyway, there's something that we know that's what we should go towards. We should learn to have that. Now, how closely that links with courage, I'm not so, well, for me, you are above courage already if you have that, I think. There have been moments in my life where I needed to take a decision, a few like coming to Oroville, where people can say, I had a very comfortable life. I mean, there was no reason for me to leave all of that behind. It was fun. It was great. I mean, let's face it, how many people work a few hours a day, and at the end of their work, there's just so many people in front of them all clapping their hands because you worked. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's true. That's what we got. It's insane. So that's very comfortable, and to leave that behind for me was not people say that's courageous somehow here. I mean, people over there said, and I lost my mind and I was completely insane and I did the most idiotic thing anybody could ever do. But here people will say that's very courageous to leave that behind. For me, it wasn't courageous because it was a choice that wasn't a real choice for me. It was like, okay, yeah, well, I can choose that, but that's not as interesting as this. And it was a split-second choice, the kind of thing. And okay, it is indeed. I don't know whether I sound ridiculous when I say that, but I find living in Oroville, I find that horribly hard. I've had endless moments where I thought, what the hell am I doing? Why do I do this to myself? Why don't I just go back and you know, I can pick that up and do something like that there also. I can take it back. And then something really keeps me here. But I wouldn't say personally that that's courage. Well, I don't... Courage. Is it courageous to do things that you know are difficult? Is that what we call courage? Or what do we call courage? What's the courage in itself? Because ultimately, I think every person that does something that we call courageous does it not to be courageous. You know, here I am, I'm courageous. I mean, you can see TV programs where people do kind of physically daunting things also to be courageous, to be admired for, oh, I did this. But that's not really what we're talking about, right? We're talking about having a spiritual courage to stand for that truth. Even if it might not be, I mean, the ultimate truth or whatever, because we can't grasp that fully, but still, you don't do that to get the label courage or a courageous person. Also, you don't do that for that. You do that because you can't do anything else, because your soul pushes you to do it, and you feel there's no other way out, really. Because I think otherwise you don't do it. You just say, I'm sorry. I mean, when I was here for 3 months as a guest, I needed to do my guest period. I went through the hardest. I went through the hardest time of my life. I was literally borderline in a psychosis. It was so hard. It was so difficult. I had split up with my partner over this, and all of that was it was making me go bonkers somehow. And so when I needed to come back to start my newcomer newcomer year, I didn't want to do that at all. And this is where I say I don't feel that I was courageous. I was miserable. I was shattered, and I felt like nothing at all. When I was in the airplane, I was scared, beepless, and I really thought, I can't do this. I just can't. It's way too big for me. The people, it's not about the people, but that whole thing over there is so negative. It's so challenging you in everything. You feel so alone here very often. I mean, I don't know how it is when you have a partner, but well, anyway. It really pushes you to a limit, because it's not really about people, but situations confront you with yourself in an extreme way. And it's very hard to find any comfort anywhere in these things. And then always you need to remember the words of Mother, no other foothold than the divine. And so when I was coming back in the airplane to start my newcomer year, I had told my partner, I can't do this. And he had gone through God knows what all also himself. And he said, look, you cannot just pretend that the past 2 years didn't happen. This was very difficult. We need to I won't close the door. If you just go for a few weeks, see if you still feel so horribly miserable, and then come back, and then we'll just make an assessment of our relationship and the situation, and we'll see where we go from there. And so that's the only reason that I came back in that airplane, is because he told me it's okay, you can come back if it feels rotten. And I was like, I'm booking a flight tomorrow, I'm not going to stay 1 day. I mean, and he said something like 2-3 weeks, and I said, I won't last 3 weeks. I'm dead in 3 weeks there. So in the airplane, I was at the lowest low of courage. I had none of it, absolutely nothing. And I felt like a little ball of misery, like, oh, I can't do this. And if I may, from that point where I was so utterly down, I prayed to Mother and I said, Mother, if you feel I can do something there, or if you want me there, you will have to do this because I cannot. I don't have any strength and anything. The only thing that can do is when you do it. And she gave me a miracle after I came here. Otherwise, I would never have stayed, and I would actually have booked a flight back on the first day that I was here. But she gave me the insight that Oroville, no, I was free to choose any and go anywhere in the world. My choice was my choice. But she gave me the knowledge that Oroville was, at this moment in time, the best place for me on earth. For whatever reason, I don't know. I just knew that was the knowledge that I got. I woke up with it. I don't even know how she gave it to me. I woke up with that knowledge. And so for me, that doesn't feel like courage. It's just because we get through it somehow. And then the point where you can say people can be courageous is indeed when you stand somewhere on a point where you're very scared and you think, I don't want to do this, really. I don't want to do this. And then somewhere your connection to that truth or to the soul or to whatever the divine tells you, yes, but but this is the right thing to do. No matter how much you're going to reason it away or whatever reasons you can give, this is the thing to do. Maybe that's the moment where you can say, well, it's courageous to then go for it and do it, because somehow you feel it's the right thing to do.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that journey. And we have got the signal for wrap up, and maybe we can just conclude with a few lines from you.
I wanted to mention 2 points, nothing else. You see, one thing when Belu was talking about fear, Mother was commenting on what Buddha had given us a list. These are the things which are the obstructions to knowledge. And she said, Buddha has put lust first among the impurities which you have to get rid of. He said, I'll put lust second. I put fear first. He said, fear is the greatest of all impurities. Because fear is denial of the divine, denial of the truth. And second, you see, courage is something, when we are talking about, fear goes right into the very beginning of life. If you read the book The Mother, that will be a line about, she condescended to descend through the portals of a birth that is death. Right in the beginning of life, what we have been mentioned, this has been mentioned in the Vedas, it is called Ashanaya Mrityu, a hunger that is death. See, we started from there, where every moment is a threat of something going to come and eat you up. Even when you are an amoeba, with the other amoeba approaching, you have fear. You don't call it fear, you don't call it courage. Because it's instinctive. Right from the time when we started growing up as cells coming together through so many forms and so many species. It is supposed to be, according to the Indian tradition, 84 lakhs. Till you come to the human birth, everything is already there in you. It's right what you call the subconscious. It is something when of that portion of your evolution where there was no conscious mind of things which you were never ever conscious of, but you have come through. Maybe at the level of a unicellular animal or a animal where there was fear, there was life, and there was death. So fear is something that is sort of inherent in the very body that I have, maybe even to another level. So it takes so many forms, just like I got a phone call right now. Now, The old tendency would have been, oh, somebody is calling, who's called, maybe what is this, what is the mind starts running, And one part will tell me, you can ignore it. The number, I don't know the number, who has called. Maybe that fellow called, and maybe it's important. All these things are tied to that faith. And there, again, what I basically believe is that courage and faith go together. When you have faith, courage is much more easier. And sometimes some of the lines of them, these lines are wonderful. These are lines on which, one of the most important lines on which I base my sadhana given by the mother. In peace and silence, the eternal manifests. Allow nothing to disturb you, and the eternal will manifest. Have perfect equality in the face of all, and the eternal will be there.
Beautiful.
So the first movement I have to make is that anything comes, I am not disturbed.
So I think
And that
that's
takes courage. That
that's
takes
the
courage.
calm mind, the calm centric piece of action. So with that, thank you so much for those beautiful lines. That is, I think this can go on, but some of the few things, that is the courage and faith, aspiration and courage is what you taught. Yeah, faith and trust and So for me, I think. The one thing is to act, and act by clinging to the truth, by having the faith, and to know that one is only an instrument, and to just keep cleaning that instrument and go back to that silence when there is a trigger on the outside, and to find that inner conviction, inner call, inner clarions that will allow you to act. And of course, you may get it right sometimes, you may not get it right sometimes, but it's always going back to and getting that clarity. And the courage is to also admit I made a mistake. That's the humility. And the courage is also to call for working together despite that. So with that, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate this. And thank you so much. No, he was asking if somebody has questions. What I would probably do is we will interact with them offline, because I'm also being mindful we have the next session and they need to line up and get ready. So as a small token of our appreciation, a small gift for all.